Dun, dun. Okay, now we're ready. We need this. All right, so evaluate department structure. Evaluate the supply management organizational structure and modify as necessary to achieve the optimum structure. So functional impact of organizational structure. Department structures evolve and change to follow the company strategy or the company business, depending on what it is. Decentralized organizations tend to have more autonomy and are suited to industries where business units operate independently in very different industry segments. So Dana here is an example of that. It's actually a manufacturing firm, but it owns aerospace, it owns automotive, it owns all kinds of weird stuff. There is no central locus for procurement decision-making and no specialized buying experience because there's no overlap between the divisions. They're not buying anywhere near the same parts. Centralized organizations are prevalent in industries that are highly regulated or can benefit from economies of scale, such as ours. And centralized decision-making. Apple's an example of a centralized purchasing system. Decision-making authority rests with a certain group or location. In our case, it's Bellevue. So there's also a hybrid model we'll get into. So centralized, decentralized, or hybrid models. Companies need to decide how centralized procurement should be. So we use a hybrid model. Most of the major decisions are made here in Bellevue, but there is some decision-making that takes place in Denton, other decisions that take place in Doff. Some companies almost completely conducting procurement work for all sites at a central location. Others decentralize the function entirely, giving each site full authority to conduct all its activities. You see that in a lot of service industries. Other companies operate somewhere between the two. So a matrix model is a fourth type, and it would be used by companies that are project-based. So supply managers would report to a procurement department, but be tasked out to other managers and work on specific projects. And the defense contractors will set up this way. So if you're building aircraft carriers or submarines, it takes years. You'll usually report into the project manager. Sometimes you'll report to a procurement manager and get tasked out, but the project manager is the guy writing your PAR. Hybrid structures may lean more heavily towards centralized or decentralized, depending on how decision-making authority is divided. And a 2004 CAPS research study found that in the future, respondents expected that centralized structures would equal hybrid structures in terms of use. And purely decentralized structures are expected to decline. So I guess even with the service industry, you could centralize office supplies, things like that. Certain underlying characteristics help to understand why companies use the structure they do. So the degree of similarity in purchase requirements across business units. If they're highly similar, you're going to be more centralized. Extent to which the facilities are geographically dispersed or concentrated. So we've got, if you're in Europe and Asia and the US, it's going to be tough to be centralized. Total purchase dollar expenditure for the company, magnitude of potential cost savings for combining volumes, extent of the investment in information technology, and company's top management philosophy, either control-oriented or profit-center driven. And I'll let you guess which one PACCAR is. Advantages of centralized procurement include buying leverage, communication with suppliers, there's a single point of contact, ease of implementation, ease of coordinating, greater knowledge. The commodity manager is a specialist in that industry. Job satisfaction, more time to manage, and lower operating costs because you're consolidating a lot of procurement functions. Advantages to decentralized procurement. If you got a lot of different internal customers, like a service industry, puts procurement closer to the end user. Broader responsibilities, decentralized buyers have a wider range of responsibilities. They're not specialists in a particular industry like we are. Decision-making authority, it's a flatter organization, and better purchase timing because you're closer to the people that are actually using the service or the good, the internal customer. And then there's hybrid structures. Trying to operate a decentralized philosophy with a centralized common buying requirements. That just sounds like a disaster, but companies do approach it that way. Some hybrid structures include things like lead division procurement. So if Kenworth and Peterbilt both had purchasing staffs, one division would place contracts for everybody. Buying councils or commodity teams across the divisions. Corporate steering committees, shared services groups, and graphic or regional buying teams. So this is how they're trying to be decentralized, but still be centralized on some issues. Product or brand management. Procurement is organized around the company's product or brand lines, or more broadly around their business units. So Procter & Gamble does this. Each of their product lines has a procurement function in it. Usually found in companies whose product development is centered on brand lines, like Procter & Gamble. Can morph into a hybrid where common items are purchased centrally, and they probably do it that way at P&G. So geographic procurement authority is centered in geographic areas. So companies have global operations, may start with regional sourcing and move to single company global sourcing where possible. This is what we're doing with GZEV trucks, the new truck coming out, battery electric. We're trying to make that as much global as possible. Companies that have primary operations in a single region will concentrate the sourcing in that region. The other satellites will use the regional contracts when possible. So this is what Kenworth Australia does. They use the North America contracts. Brazil will use the DOF contracts. Companies may establish regional procurement offices in areas that have higher supplier concentrations. PACCAR does this in China and India. And organizational types and their implications. So functional organization, departments are organized by area of expertise, such as a procurement, controller, engineering, etc. This is the way PACCAR is organized, by functional department. Advantages, efficient use of specialized resources, and each manager is an expert on a narrow range of skills. Disadvantages, the response time can be slow, and if you've ever tried to get a memorandum signed at PACCAR, you know this. Conflicts for product priorities, disperse overall responsibility for tasks. A matrix organization, where people with similar skills are pooled for a work assignment. So in a matrix organization, this is again if you're building submarines or aircraft carriers. Buyers report to a procurement department, but are assigned out to work with different business units. Now, our service industry will work this way too. When I worked at Expedia, this was the way that they did it. Each buyer has two supervisors, provides flexibility, stimulates cross-functional collaboration, and develops skills. But it divides the employee loyalty and requires good communication skills. So the marketing manager that I would get farmed out to would have input on my PAR, but the procurement manager was the one that was actually writing the PAR. Project organization. Each new project has a new organization formed around it. So this is submarines. Buyers can be assigned as full-time or part-time employees. And project-oriented businesses such as construction or engineering, this type will allow procurement to focus on the project. So if you're in building office buildings, it's probably a project organization for the company. Disadvantages, this type of structure makes it more difficult to leverage volumes for purchasing. It's kind of a decentralized model. Category or commodity management assigns buyers to category types. Structure can be overlaid over other types of structures, usually used in large companies buying in large volumes that are somewhat centralized. This type of structure can also be used if specialized expertise is required to purchase the item, such as airline fuel or coffee beans, etc. So here's a functional structure broken down into, finance, supply, which is purchasing for us, marketing, logistics, sourcing. Well, these two would be procurement. This might be materials. Operations would be truck manufacturing. Everybody reports up to the CEO. Here's structured by brand. So this is kind of like Procter and Gamble, although I think they have groups of brands. Not every brand has its own production. And then geographical, North America, Asia, Europe. Key considerations. Organizational structures are driven by 5 key issues: spend management, how the structure would contribute to managing the overall spend; aggregation, how can you use maximum leverage for it to aggregate your volumes; and service to stakeholders, depending on what that looks like in your company. If you've got a lot of disparate stakeholders or you're pretty centralized like we are. Strategic roles in larger companies, strategic roles are held by different individuals. So a category manager, often called a commodity manager, responsible for overseeing and maximizing the value of a group of related parts or services. These are some of the things that the commodity manager was looking at. Supplier relationship manager, Expedia used these. Partners with internal stakeholders to segment and manage supplier relationships. So marketing would have a supplier relationship manager that would work with procurement. Tactical roles, handle the day-to-day operations. These are usually called buyers and planners. In a smaller company, it's called a buyer planner. But they're doing a lot of the day-to-day stuff. They're doing the RPIs, they're doing the invoice discrepancies, they're writing the blanket purchase orders, and they're doing the releases to the blankets. They're the ones that are actually issuing the RFIs and RFPs. The planner, we use these down at the plants. They're expediting orders when necessary. They're reading MRP screens to determine order quantities, and they're talking to suppliers about, where's my stuff? And then, you combine the two in smaller companies because they have fewer parts. Workload within procurement can be distributed several ways: by commodity or category, which is what we do; aligning personnel with internal customer departments. So maybe one person is the marketing procurement person, etc. Special projects, you can chop them to do special projects. This is kind of how Expedia worked. And volume, assigned by dollar or transaction volume, usually used where there's not extreme differences in the work required across transactions. So if you're pretty much buying very similar stuff, you can divvy it up by dollar volume. In rotation. So incoming work is assigned to the next person on the list. This assumes you don't need any expertise. Commodities are all pretty much the same. Type of contract, this is kind of like commodity specific. Staff expertise and supplier, having one purchasing agent per supplier. So it works well where there's a limited number of suppliers providing a large proportion of the material. So steps in the department evaluation: identify the department objectives, identify criteria for success. So you look at what you want to go to, then you've got to figure out how you're going to get there. And appraisal factors. This is how you're going to keep track of where you're going. select and execute data collection methods, and exercise management controls. So it's all about performance measurement and management. All right. Which of the following is least likely to be an advantage of centralizing supply management? Anybody like anything here?
D.
Implementation and use least likely. I think it's probably going to be C. Because communication with centralization is going to be more difficult in theory. Yeah.
What?
More removed. So D is easier in a centralized because you can just kind of do it by command. All right.
Yeah, but if you have one engineering department and you've got 6 people trying to talk to the engineers versus one, how is that not an advantage of centralization?
You bring up a good point, but ISM isn't thinking that way. All right, so Juan Diego is the newly hired vice president of corporate supply management for an automotive service company. One of his first objectives in the new job is to review and possibly adjust the organization's structure to match the corporate objectives that include cost reductions and more rapid response time to product, service, and market changes. During his review, he learns that only half of the total spend of common items, the rest are widely diverse. Learns that only half of the total spend consists of common items. The rest are widely diverse. So supply management is required to provide services to sites in 6 countries. And today the IT capabilities are limited, of course. Given these circumstances, what is Juan's best option?
I think B, decentralize all commodities to the sites so that they can source locally for the fastest response times.
And that would be good if he had no common items, but he's got.
I'm going to go with C.
Yeah, he's got half of them are common.
Half common, yeah.
Oops. So, yeah, I think it's the answer C, where you're centralizing the common items.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I didn't read that second half.
Yeah. Yeah, C, you're centralizing the common items and then decentralizing the uncommon ones. All right. There's 8 questions out there, so let's go over answers at 3:55 or raise your hand if you get done early. Oh, dang, you guys are quick. Okay. Number one is delta. Workload can be distributed in a number of ways and can be determined after the overall organization structure is established. 2 is Charlie, because even the most skilled and committed supply management personnel need an effective organization to back them up. I liked Alpha better. 3 is also Charlie. Commodity assignments encourage supply management personnel to develop greater knowledge of the marketplace. 4 is Bravo. Buying leverage is an advantage of centralization. 5 is also Bravo. Collaboration among the decentralized supply management departments is necessary for improving in supplier performance and pricing. 7 or 6 is Bravo. Decentralized supply management organization will be closer to the client and will be able to react faster to their needs. Also stated AFAB had few national clients, so it's likely each of their clients want something different. 7 is Bravo again. Because a company has 6 major brands with 24 to 36 projects on each brand, and the brand is the dominant factor here. And 8 is Alpha. What didn't they like about Bravo? In lead division buying, the division or the location with the largest volumes. Commodity Council Commodity Council. Okay, well.
I thought pool buying.
Pool buying
is consolidation of requirements from multiple organizations to a single large order. That is exactly what it says they're doing.
Yeah, and this is why you can never get 100% on these ISM questions, because it's their opinion that it's A. And they don't really tell you, they don't really give you good reasons for it.
Their answer is even the explanation to why they picked A is not in alignment.
Not great, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, it's just their opinion. Okay. All righty. Well, that's what I got for you guys today. We'll hit C2 on Monday.
Thanks.
Thanks, Rick.
Have a good weekend.
Yep, you too.
Good luck on your trip there, Aaron.
Yeah, thank you, Rick.
All right.